My name is Anthony Gentles, and I go to Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. For one of my school's summer programs, 12 other students and I, along with our two professors, spent a month in Ireland. Yeah, I said it. Ireland. It was a 5-hour flight from Boston to Ireland. The plane landed in Shannon, and we traveled by bus to Ballyvan in County Clare. Two things that I noticed while driving around were the narrow-ass roads and the hundreds and hundreds of cattle in the fields. We got to the house, and it was freaking huge. I thought it was going to be like an episode of The Real World. The house had about 20 couches inside. That's enough to fit an entire football team. And not that European football nonsense. I'm talking about American football. But anyways, we unpacked our stuff and got ready for the next day. This is Brian. He gave us a tour around the area. We got into the bus and drove to the first location. We stayed inside the bus here, so all I saw were a bunch of trees and bushes. Brian mentioned something about a fairy fort. I was really hoping to catch a fairy and keep it as a pet. Unfortunately, I didn't see a damn thing. We saw a castle that was owned by a crazy redhead. I have that phrase in quotes because those were Brian's exact words. She apparently killed off her first husband, then remarried to keep her castle. Once it was hers for good, she killed the second husband by sending him off a cliff. Bitches be crazy. There was also an old church and gravesite we went to. The site was so old, I wonder if there were any ghosts that would have appeared at night. That would have been awesome. Would have made up for the lack of fairies that were supposed to be flying around. We also went to a supermarket. Nothing really special about this place. Just a normal supermarket. And then, the infamous Cliffs of Moher. This place was amazing. Brian was telling us that they filmed a scene for Harry Potter here as well, for the Half-Blood Prince movie. We left there to go to another set of cliffs a few minutes down the road. Everyone was looking over the edge, so I wanted to do the same. I looked over, saw the water at the bottom, and imagined myself falling to a gruesomely painful death. I got my ass away from there, and fast. The following day was our first time at the Byrne School of Art. This place was great. Had a castle, a calf, computer labs, and a library. Now that I think about it, that sounds just like any normal school. Well, minus a castle, of course. We went to the studio space and were allowed to choose our working areas. Then came hell. We were given an assignment that took place at the heart of the burn. We had to create charcoal rubbings on a roll of paper using the rocks as our surface. Sounds easy enough, except when you factor in the wind blowing my paper away and ripping it in half, and then the rain completely soaking everything in its sight. After the weather finished whooping my ass, we went to the studio to hang up our works. We went to the beach the next day. Looked something like a desktop wallpaper, an unreal sight. We split into groups to complete our next project. Our group created a line of rocks mimicking the form of the waves. We wanted to see how the water reacted with the placement of our rocks. However, the tide never rose. It just went back towards the ocean. This made things awkward and difficult. We left and came back 5 hours later, expecting the tide to be closer to the stones this time. The waves were even further away. The day after involved some hiking. Our guide for the day was Shane. He was a pretty funny dude, but told the most sexist jokes ever. Not the best way to gain the approval of the ladies. And what is a hike without a little bit of whiskey? Not really sure why he had a bottle of Jameson with him, but then again, I won't complain. We left the mainland for the weekend to head to the Aran Islands. We took a ferry to the smallest island to explore the area. I saw a Russian ship that crashed on the shore. I'm 86% positive that this is where the Titanic crashed. We left there to go to the largest island. We stayed in the hostel in the tiniest room I've ever seen. Honestly, don't think our room was made for 3 people. We unpacked, then went to the pubs for some drinks. This is where I met the world's most interesting man. And no, not that Dos Equis guy. I'm talking about Johnny the Fox. We saw him outside playing the guitar, and he ended up being a really great guy with some hilarious stories to tell. He took us to another pub around the corner where we saw a live musical performance. We met another group of kids here from outside of Dublin. These kids were a ton of fun. They told us about a disco that was happening down the road, so we went to check it out. However, it wasn't much of a disco. Practically no one showed up. I slept in until noon the next day, getting some much needed rest. There were sights on the island that I had to scope out, so I rented a bike to ride around. I met up with the others, checked out this fort on a cliff, but mostly just a cliff. I threw a rock from the top and it took about 7 seconds for it to fall into the water below. The others wanted to head back to the hostel, but I had another spot to visit. There was a natural hole in the ground, 13 meters deep, that was about 20 minutes away. Unfortunately, there was no actual path to get to it. As a result, I got lost. Somehow, I saw a tour group hiking in the distance, so I ran over to ask where this wormhole was. The tour guide pointed me in the right direction, but apparently I was going the wrong way the whole time. I finally found the site, and it looked just as beautiful as I expected. Now I only had one problem. I had less than an hour to return the bike, and I had no idea where I was. Eventually, I found my way back to the hostel, with just enough time to return the bike. Rest was necessary. The next day, we took a ferry back to the mainland. This time, the waves weren't as calm as before. The boat was tossing and turning the entire way. Our next 3 weeks here weren't as wild as the first. I spent hour after hour working in the studio trying to finish my final project. When the time came to display the work to my professors, they were extremely impressed. I think I even saw Myra smile. After all the students presented their projects, we went back to the house to pack up our stuff. Our next stop before heading back to America? Dublin.